From the heart of the continent in the middle of the Great Prairies, this is Bad Paranormalist. I am the Bad Paranormalist, Kenny. On this edition, we'll get into Jeff Keel's book, Trojan Horse, which is a great way to look at the history of the phenomenon, the history of ufology, and compare and contrast it to what's going on today. Lots of similarities. We'll also be getting into the paranormal news of the week, starting off with the eclipse from last week. Now, this video out of Arlington, Texas, shows the eclipse being obscured by clouds, but also there's some sort of objects in the clouds that are blocking the light, casting shadows. The main theory is that these are probably helicopters or drones or planes trying to get good photo ops of the eclipse themselves. It's a great way to start off the show. The next news story comes from Delaware Online. Dozens in the Northeast report sightings of a fireball on April 10th. Yes, whether you saw it or not. Just a short little thing. The American Meteor Society has received 34 reports about a fireball, referred to as Event 1842-2024, seen over Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Connecticut on Wednesday, April 20th at around 3:44 a.m. And it looked like a bright flash, like lightning, then another bright flash of green when it appeared to disappear, said a witness from Cornwall, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of stuff going on in our night sky. Another interesting thing to happen this week is the Venturesky anomaly. So Venturesky is a website where you can go to look at the world weather, from waves to temperature, winds. It's all pretty good. This one talks about this Texas-sized weather phenomenon that was captured by these buoys. So it's looking like these are Texas-sized object creating 85-foot waves. Pretty interesting if you checked it out. Just spread from the South Pole, moving all the way up to Africa. A very interesting phenomenon. Look at this tweet from Stephen Greenstreet. It goes to show that Ross Clohart is looking at this wave phenomenon that was captured by Venturesky, saying, what's going on here? Stephen Greenstreet is calling him out, saying, if you would have just checked with Venturesky about what was going on, you would have realized it was a glitch in the system. This glitch, though, is amazing, and it looks like there's this object the size of Texas creating 85-foot waves spreading out from the South Pole. It's just an amazing video, but it's just a bunch of glitch in the system. And Stephen Greenstreet is perfect in this moment, saying, hey, Ross, you're an investigative journalist and you're supposed to be looking at UFOs. Why didn't you just contact Venturesky? Perfect call out. Great job, Stephen Greenstreet. This next story comes from Science Alert. NASA mission accidentally sends space rocks hurtling towards Mars. Well, you remember that DART mission a couple months back where we saw what would happen if we sent a satellite into an asteroid, and it was a success, or so we thought. With a new analysis of the debris ejected from the asteroid, when NASA slammed the DART spacecraft into it, it revealed that some of the rocks could be on a collision course with Mars. Like Mars doesn't have enough trouble as it is, we're skipping rocks towards it at a cosmic scale. Now they're saying it could take up to a few thousand years to get there. And because Mars isn't protected by an atmospheric cushion like Earth, these rocks, according to the calculations, will fall straight down in one piece, excavating a small crater of up to 300 meters. I mean, hopefully we don't have any colonies on Mars by that time, or hopefully we find a way to, deflect it so that future citizens will worry about it. Sticking with Science Alert, we will go to this story. This tiger was thought to be extinct. Then a single strand of hair was found. Now, for decades, there have been no trace of the Sumerian tiger, but in 2019, a hair sample was found. On August 18th, a local resident and conservationist claimed to have glimpsed a tiger outside a village in West Java. He reported the sighting to a researcher who, together with a government employee, went to visit the site. They saw footprints and claw marks that could have been made by a tiger, and clinging to the fence, a single strand of hair. Well, here we go. They did a test and they compared it to a sample from a museum from 1930, and they are both from the same subspecies, which is pretty remarkable. The fact that we find these big cat sightings all across the world, and here we have actual proof. And this, of course, gives us more hope that Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, things like this, will be found in time. And we'll skip into some cryptid talks. The Loch Ness Center is urging to get help from NASA in its latest search for the monster. This, of course, is one of the biggest searches yet, because it will be conducted on the 90th anniversary of Sir Edward Mountain's expedition from May 3rd to June 2nd. And since that first expedition in 1934, there have been over 1,156 sightings of the monster. The Loch Ness Center said, "We're hoping that Nessie hunters around the world will help us reach people at NASA." Well, I don't know if you know this, but they're too busy shooting rocks at Mars because they hate Mars for some reason. I don't think you want their help. I'll just screw it up. Alright, this is a wild one. Apparently a woman, 22, was found dead of blood loss with wounds in her neck in an abandoned church in Italy. This is right from the Global News story. A 22-year-old French woman was found dead in an abandoned, deconstructed church in northern Italy last week after bleeding out from a deep wound on her neck. The mysterious killing has been the subject of much speculation in Italy, especially after witnesses came forward saying he saw the woman with her boyfriend days before she died and described the pair as two vampires. Here we go. I mean, hopefully this guy is easy to find. And we'll leave on this one. Man reveals how new theory about strange creature found in cave in Monterrey. Another man from Monterrey has caused a sensation on social networks by sharing new images of an intriguing theory about a mysterious creature he found in the cave, and it looks like the body of an alien made out of dried chilies. Now it looks like more alien mummy stuff, but let's get into this story. According to the man, the creature found has a bone structure that differs noticeably from that of a human. While a typical human being has 24 ribs, this creature only has 20 ribs, which has led the poster to raise the possibility that this is a being similar to the famous Mexican mummies. Alright, like if you're defining a human being is someone with 24 ribs, and this thing has 20 ribs, and this is the only way that you can define the difference between two species, it's probably not looking good. DNA testing goes a lot further than that. That's the creepy news that I saw this week. Now, John Keel, most people know him as the author of the Mothman Prophecies, bringing to light that awesome cryptid. But his second book, Operation Trojan Horse, is where we get his perspective on the UFO phenomenon. He does so much research. He says 2,000 articles or something silly like that of UFO instances throughout America and tries to compile them and figure out what this UFO phenomenon is. Now, according to his Wikipedia, he was an American journalist and influential ufologist who is best known for the Mothman Prophecies. He moved to New York City to make a living as a writer. He ended up in Greenwich Village and became an editor of Poetry magazine. He worked as a freelance contributor to the newspaper, script writing for local radio and television outlets, and author of pulp articles such as Are You a Repressed Sex Fiend? Which I definitely would like to find out more about that. Now here's where things get a little sticky. He was drafted into the US Army during the Korean War because he had worked with radio and TV. He was assigned to the radio station American Forces Network at Frankfurt, Germany, and started writing radio programs within 1 year. He was chief of production for the network. When his 2 years of military service ended, he was offered and accepted a civilian job in the Army. He claims that while in the Army, he was trained in psychological warfare as a propaganda writer. So this is where this story is coming from. A journalist who has been trained by the US Army as a propaganda writer. Is it any different from a lot of the people that are disseminating this information to us now? No, it's pretty much the same deal. But with his story, Operation Trojan Horse, we can compare and contrast how ufology was back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, and how it is now. Let's get into this book. So Operation Trojan Horse was published in 1970, but it sort of runs parallel to Project Blue Book, where it talks about things that happened in the UFO community in the 1950s and 60s, primarily the 60s, 68's a big year, and 70. So let's get right into this forward. And I thought it would be interesting to do a deep dive on this book because of the similarities that are repeating over and over again in the UFO community. I feel this book does a great job of showing what the UFO community was doing in the 60s and 70s, and we can compare and contrast it to what's happening right now. Now, right away, John Keel speaks to my heart, where he starts bringing up the fact that we need to examine all the data points, the stuff that we know is hoaxes and the stuff that we know is beyond explanation, to sort of understand this phenomenon. You need to be able to disprove You need to show the world that you can disprove hoaxes, that you can take the data points that are hoaxes and show the people why they should not be taken seriously, and then show people the mind-blowing stuff. These are the things that we can prove aren't hoaxes.
The data must be reviewed quantitatively, no matter how arduous the task becomes. There is a natural tendency to concentrate on only those facets which seem most interesting, or which seem to provide the best evidence.
I mean, we're all guilty of it. It's so much more fun to talk about events where people get burned by UFOs, or they have scarring from abductions, or there's footprints left in the backyards. Like, these are the stories that endear us, that make it real. But we need to look at everything. I found this interesting that even in the 60s, John Keel said that we need to watch out for these big personalities in the UFO cultist community. And then he does like a little tease where he says that the original manuscript for this book, 2,000 pages, he had worked on it for 4 years in a row, 7 days straight. So you can tell he was dedicated to finding out what the phenomenon was.
History, psychiatry, religion, and the occult have proven to be far more important to an understanding of the whole than the many books, which simply recount the endless sightings of aerial anomalies.
And this is an amazing tease right here. The history of the UFO phenomenon has been around forever, since as long as we've been around. The fact that he doesn't say anything about technology goes to show you where this book goes. And the fact that it still relates to the UFO phenomenon, I mean, it's pretty insightful for me, it seems like it's pretty insightful for 1970.
The real problems hidden behind the UFO phenomenon are staggering and so complex that they will seem almost incomprehensible at first. The popular beliefs and speculations are largely founded upon biased reporting, gross misinterpretations, and the inability to see beyond the limits of any one of many frames of reference. Cunning techniques of deception and psychological warfare have been employed by the UFO source to keep us confused and skeptical. Man's tendency to create a deep and inflexible belief on the basis of little or no evidence has been exploited. These beliefs have created tunnel vision and blinded many to the real nature of the phenomenon, making it necessary for me to examine and analyze many of these beliefs in this text. Some readers will be offended and enraged by what I have to say and how I have chosen to say it. It is not my intention to attack any belief or frame of reference. Rather, I have tried to demonstrate how all of these things blend together into a larger whole.
And with that, we get into Chapter 1, The Secret War. Chapter 1 starts with an event that happened on October 5th, 1960, which is a Wednesday, an important date in this book, when it was reported that there are these objects coming out of the Soviet Union and heading towards the States. Now, if this were the case, back in 1960, this would have set off a lot of alarms. People were worried about World War III starting back then. My, how things have changed. But as the commanders worried about what was happening, whether they should set off the planes with nuclear weapons to stop this UFO invasion, the signal just stopped. It disappeared. Now later, it was learned that this was an iceberg that had cut the submarine cable. But John Keel, because he's an investigator, didn't believe this answer. He's found it hard to believe that such well-trained people and crewmen and equipment would fail to such a degree, especially something so important as radar in the Cold War.
The US Air Force replied that the radar signals had actually bounced off the moon and had been misinterpreted. The story appeared in The Guardian, a leading newspaper in Manchester, England, on November 30th, and a week later, it was buried on page 71 of the New York Times. Could modern military radar really convert the moon into a formation of flying saucers? I have excellent reasons for doubting it. In May 1967, I toured a secret radar installation in New Jersey at the Air Force's own invitation, and I was extremely impressed by the complexity and efficiency.
Keel thinks that it's very improbable that the moon, or any other object in the sky, would fool these highly advanced radar systems. Now, another event, this one occurs. There's not only radar data that proves that there is something there, but there are human witnesses to this event.
July 27, 1966. Several police officers in the High Point Randolph County area also reported seeing unidentifiable objects buzzing the vicinity. They said the objects appeared to be at an altitude of 500 feet and described them as being round, brilliant red-green, and appeared to be emitting flashes of light. The government's official position toward flying saucers has been totally negative since 1953, although a great deal of attention has been paid to the subject behind the scenes.
For further proof, he brings up this Type 1 sighting with 2 sober witnesses.
Ironically, at 8 a.m. that very day, C. Philip Lambert and Donnie Russell Rose, both stable men with good reputations, were driving to work outside of Charleston, South Carolina, when they reportedly noticed a strange circular object spinning in the clear sky above the Southern Trucking Company terminal on Meeting Street Road. They stopped their car and watched the object for about 8 minutes. It looked like a sterling silver disc, Lambert said. It was about 14 feet tall and 20 feet in diameter. We just happened to look up into the sky. It was such a pretty day. I know we saw it. We were both wide awake. And neither of us drinks. A veteran of 8 years in the airborne infantry, Lambert estimated that the object was 800 or 900 feet above the ground when they first saw it. It appeared to be spinning rapidly and was constantly shifting from one position to another. This was what ufologists call a Type 1 sighting, a low-level object observed and reported by reliable witnesses.
UFOs exist, people see them, we have radar proof of them, and the military takes them seriously, even though they don't. And now I start talking about the difference between a flap of sightings, where these UFOs appear. Multiple people cite these UFOs over a short time. And one of the biggest flaps happened in 1967 with these 22 sightings he's going to go over. The first of these 22 sightings is from March 9th, 1967, in Floodwood, Minnesota. The Rural Forum reported a strange object was seen up in the sky hovering above people's houses. Now there's a comment that it gave some of those folks there the shivers. The object moved with a gliding motion with brilliant lights and sometimes just hovered and sometimes moving with the utmost speed. It appeared around 8 o'clock each night and stays for 1 or 2 hours before it fades away. Number 2. On March 11th, 1967, the Detroit, Michigan Free Press had this story. Police say they received multiple reports of UFOs hovering over a school at around 8 p.m. on Wednesday. The Air Force and police were called out to investigate what was reported as being a burning orange oval that was apparently photographed by 2 people. A major from the local Air Force base that there was something out there and that too many people saw it. Now the third sighting comes out of Oklahoma and was recorded by the Daily Freelance on March 19, 1967. In Henrietta, Oklahoma, at around 8:45 p.m., the witness stepped out to her back porch and was astounded to see a twirling light with colored lights going over 9th Street and heading south. The witness called for her 10-year-old son to come out and check out the UFO, which they said was traveling and twirling so fast that they couldn't count the number of lights on it, but it was colored, and it looked like there are some jets of flames in the rear of the object. Number 4. Clarendon, Arkansas. On March 16, 1967, the Monroe County Sun had this report of a witness who viewed an object from her kitchen window at night. And it was reddish-orange, and it changed to a silver-white color just before it took off. It was round and pretty large. It was really low, but gained height at speeds as it took off. It was moving too fast to be a star. The witness alerted neighbors, who also witnessed the object. Number 5. This one comes out of Laurel, Maryland, and on March 16, 1967, Prince George's County News captured this story. 2 residents and a police officer observed an object that appeared circular with a shiny golden bottom. When it hovered, the top glowed red. It flew in an oval-shaped path, going back and forth from Fort Meade to Laurel 3 times before taking off. Number 6 comes out of Montana and happened on March 9, 1967, in Missoula, Montana, and the Mississaulian Sentinel captured this story. That reports were made to the county sheriff that they had seen a circular flying object which dropped 3 balls of fire before disappearing at 8:20 p.m. on Wednesday night. Now, number 7 is also out of Montana and happened on the same day, March 9th, 1967. But this time, Bakerfield, Montana, Following County Times had this story. Multiple witnesses had made reports about seeing colored lights in the Ekalaka, Lame Jones, and Willard areas. The objects apparently hovered about a mile off the ground, flew up and down at will, and were seen in the early night. And this last line of the story is kind of interesting. Any attempt to try to get closer to them makes them literally disappear into thin air. Number 8 happened in Cydonia, Missouri, where an observer saw some flashing lights in his kitchen at around 7:15 last Wednesday and called his wife. They said they saw a shiny, metal, oblong globe-shaped object that looked like a watermelon. Around the perimeter, there are many beautiful multicolored light greens and red mostly, but also white, blue, and yellow running into orange. They estimated that around 35 feet long, and they said they watched for around 15 or 20 minutes before it flew away and out of sight. And that was out of Bardstown, Kentucky Standard. Number 9 stays in Missouri, and this a story of the Versatile's lead statesman on March 16, 1967. In the past 2.5 weeks, 75 to 100 persons have reported sightings in the Osbeach and Lynn Creek areas. What an outstanding little statement. Number 10 stays in Missouri. Out of Buncenton, the witness reported seeing a multicolored object at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. She described it as having flashing blue, green, and white lights, and it hovered for 2 hours, moving up and down and up and down. Many others in the area had similar sightings, including Leo Case, a newsman from the station CRMS, and that came out of the Boonville, Missouri Daily News, March 9th, 1967. The 11th sighting moves us to Illinois. The Beacon News out of Aurora, Illinois has this story of a pair of witnesses driving on Route 30 around noon when they saw a beam of light come from a wide open area south of them. They stopped and observed a strange object for 3 to 4 minutes. It was very brilliant, one of the witnesses said, and cast a red and blue color. It was circle-shaped and it seemed to come towards us, but gained height until it went into the back of a small cloud. We watched for about 10 minutes more, but it never appeared. Now, apparently there have been other witnesses to unusual lights in the night skies that have been going on for a few months. The Leader, from March 10, 1967, out of Pontiac, Illinois, has our 12th sighting. Several witnesses apparently reported their sightings to the police on Wednesday. They said they saw a white light flashed occasionally with a few frequent red lights and periodically green light. The object appeared between 10 p.m. and the middle of the night, moving up and down slowly. More than a dozen people have seen the object in the past week. Our 13th sighting comes from the Associated Press and was widely circulated on March 10, 1967. A group of people, including the Knox County Department, watched a pulsating white and red circular object for a few hours on Wednesday night. The object resembled an upside-down bowl and appeared to be more than 2,000 feet off the ground. One of the deputies added a similar object crossed over his car on Monday as he drove along Interstate 74 near Galesburg, Illinois, but he was scared to tell anyone about it then. There are also reports of UFOs on Wednesday night in Warren and Henry counties, west of Galesburg. Sighting 14 also involves the police in Illinois. Bloomington, Illinois, Pantograph, March 10, 1967. State police and scores of other people watched UFOs near Flangang, Illinois on Wednesday night. A state trooper named Kennedy said he had followed the object to US 51, where he met 2 Woodford County deputies who had been busy watching it approach from Minnock from the east. The object was a brilliant bluish white and red. Number 15 comes out of Chicago, Illinois, and goes like this. Flying saucer reports. One of them, from a veteran policeman and a pilot, flooded the Knox County Sheriff's Office in Galesburg Thursday. Dozens of similar reports poured into the police department in Malone, Illinois. Now we can see that this is an overlapping report, number 13, and this sighting both involved the Knox County Sheriff Department. So it is good to see that there is some consistency in this event. Number 16 moves us to Iowa. Eldora, Iowa. Now the Herald Ledger on March 14, 1967 had this story. On Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights of last week, unidentified flying objects were reported by several persons. The UFOs were west of Eldora, were all reported at approximately the same time every night at around 8:30 p.m. UFOs have also been reported in the Steamboat Rock area. Number 17 happened in the Burlington, Iowa area, and the newspaper name was obliterated, but this was reported March 9th, 1967. The witness observed a saucer-shaped blue light on Wednesday night, and it was hovering above Dam 18 north of Burlington, Iowa. Now, the deputy sheriff in the area says that he thought it could have been the reflection of a spotlight on the ice. Wednesday night's sightings was the latest of several reports in the Burlington area in the past 2 weeks. Number 18 is the last sighting in Iowa, and it was reported by the News Republican on March 10th, 1967. A pair of witnesses witnessed this object, a big red ball, that was sailing over their house around 9:45 p.m. on Wednesday. They said that it looked like the setting sun, and that's how it glowed red, except that this object was very mobile and moved very fast. Number 19 goes to Kansas. Phillipsburg, Kansas. From the Review on March 16, 1967. A witness was driving home at around 10 p.m. on Wednesday night when the sky lit up and a bright blue object of some kind appeared. They said that 3 blazing tails reached towards the ground, and it moved west and then dropped down out of his sight of vision. He drove a short distance when the sky lit up and a big flash happened, and immediately ahead of him was the saucer-shaped object, and it began to spread apart, one half still blue, the other half fiery red. As the distance widened between the two parts, a connecting band, which appeared to be about a half-foot thick, formed. The object continued to break up and then disappear in another flash. Now, sighting number 20 comes out of the Marin County Recorder on March 9, 1967, and states that several police officers in Marin, Kansas, watched an unidentified flying object on Wednesday night between 8 o'clock and 8:30. Marion Police Dispatcher Sterling Frame and others viewed it through their binoculars and stated it changed colors, red, green, and yellow. They all agreed they saw it. There's no question about that. The second last sighting comes out of Whitewater, Kansas, and was captured by the Independent on March 9, 1967. Around 9 p.m. on Wednesday nights, several Towanda youths were parked along the road northwest of the town when they observed a revolving red, white, and blue lights flashing in the sky above the Wilson Field and the vicinity of a city water well. The boys fetched the city marshal and went with them in the area to view the lights himself. The marshal said that the trees along the river were lit up from the reflection of this mysterious object as it moved over them. The last sighting. Now, it happened in Norton, Kansas, and was captured in the Telegram on March 14, 1967. Sheriff G.L. Sullivan and Police Chief Al Kissner watched a hovering object for more than an hour on Wednesday evening near Goodland, Kansas. They said that the thing resembled a sphere from 12 to 14 feet long with an object attached to it which appeared about 12 feet in diameter. There were 3 lights on it, red, green, and amber. A Goodland policeman, Ron Wehunt, reported seeing an oval-shaped dome about 50 feet long that very same evening. He said it flew over the city at a moderate speed and it appeared at an altitude of around 1,000 to 1,500 feet. Now, according to John Keel, these 22 reports were a mere sample of what a flap has, and this really wasn't an exceptional flap to him. In fact, it was a very ordinary one. And he says that there are about 74 flap set datas in 1966, and many of them much larger than this event that happened on March 8, 1967. And it's great to have multiple witnesses in this event. But if this is all the same phenomenon, the problem is with the witnesses. There's many different reports of different objects, some saying that it was watermelon-shaped, oval-shaped, all set lights, some had the same type of colors, some didn't. So if this is the same phenomenon, maybe what they're seeing is different where they are, or maybe they don't know how to describe what they're seeing, maybe they don't have the words for it. So that's just one of the problems, sightings with multiple witnesses. But these are the sightings that we need, multiple witnesses saying what they saw, not jumping to conclusions that it was demons or angels or UFOs. Just we saw these bright lights in the skies, and many people, many different counties across America saw something occur on March 8th, 1967. What a great job John Keel did with this. So with these immense collection of sightings, from radar data to military figures, police officers to your average Joe citizen, multiple witnesses across America, we've laid the foundation that there may be something going on with this phenomenon. Thanks for listening. Next time we'll get further into Operation Trojan Horse.